I'll share with you some of the things that I do when I monitor different accounts, just to put the data in there. Um, Having worked in the healing community since I was a little boy, but this was a YouTube channel called Natural State Transparency. The natural state is the state of Arkansas. If you've ever looked on one of their plates, and I spent quite a few years living in that state, particularly up in northwest Arkansas, where the University of Arkansas is, right? And this was a traffic stop by an Arkansas state trooper, okay? And so I'm experiencing what's going down on an emotional level, on a mental level, on a spiritual level, on a physical level, right? So I'm pushing my energy in through, you know how something that's been recorded, right, through the system with the morphogenetic field structure. So I'm experiencing something that's already happening, but I'm transmuting what's already happening, okay? That's what a polarity integrator can do when I watch these videos, okay? Because these things are held as images. It's held within cellular memories of what we experience being together on the planet, connected to three spheres, logos, Gaia, motherboard. So I'm experiencing this trooper who was actually very polite. He, compared to not just videos I've watched with law enforcement, it's not like I spend all my time doing that. I sort of move around, okay, at different times, right? It's not like I make a habit doing this every day. No, there's a reason that I'm doing it at the time in which I'm doing it, as it relates to time and space, the time and space continuum, okay? Because I grew up around a lot of law enforcement places, and I grew up in Orange County, California, particularly during the early 1960s, and the way in which that system operated, as a story that I told about going to school at Foothill High School. When I was a freshman, we weren't allowed in there as a result of a bomb that had gone off in the library, and one that was getting ready to go off in 8 minutes before the vice principal came in there, and somebody took a .50 caliber machine gun and destroyed the inside of the gymnasium. And there was Nazi swastikas all over that school. Okay, so Orange County was known as Nazi-held territory, and I know the history because of other videos that I've done of who I've worked with, including the CIA, the U.S. military, all those folks that bring in drugs. Now we're into drug abuse, right? And when I was 6 years of age, basically doing the math on how many generations has this AI been siphoning off soul's energy in order to keep itself running, which is the beast technology, which is the black hole phantom stuff, right? So now scale this up to more modern times of realizing this, because I experienced this where they traumatize children on the front end, right? And then child abuse leads to what? Adult self-abuse. So they got all the big pharma drugs, including all the stuff that's off book, right? Even though we track all that data, it's not like we don't have all the data. Of course we have all the data, because we can experience and track the loss and gain of electrons. And the difference between an inverter and what? An accelerator. And the approximate date of the collapse of this species. That's ultimately what it is. So here we have this lady, for example, who's just minding her own business, is going down a nice, beautiful day in Arkansas, and gets stopped by an Arkansas trooper, right? So you realize what the target is. Your central nervous system. Burn your fibers out, your nerve fibers out. So you understand what it means with spiritual torture. The torture is the central nervous system, the endocrine system. How that relates to oxygen decrease, slowing down your immune system, what it does to every unit of consciousness that exists within your physical body. Right? Burn it out. Burn the ball out. Right? Now you're experiencing less life. Now you're in resistance mode, unless you've healed through love, which is the real stuff. Right? So I put a comment up there to provide some of the data, okay, that I track, okay, by experiencing, because I feel everything. When you're plugged into a motherboard, when you're an oversoul, polarity integrator, right? Because we're running all the data on an oversoul level. What's going on? We're feeling all of it. So therefore, you can process all that visual information. Basically math, right? Records. Access to records, which is access to all the data, which is the global data, right? That's running. through all the circuits, right? The arteries and veins of the planet of a living or breathing organism. So that's the truth of it. So because I was worked in fire when I got out of high school, actually started before that as a volunteer, so you're in the giving mode, the accelerator mode, right? In order to keep the poles balanced. So you want to accelerate the electrons through the grid, right? Electron cascade, how much voltage are we losing, right? So you got to be ahead of the curve on accelerating the voltage or by, right? So you realize what the AI does. It sucks on voltage off everything. That's why you can actually measure it across every species. That's why I mentioned to Karen the other day when a guy asked me about whether this was Reptoid. I said, oh no, this is AI. It feeds on everything. It's got to keep itself running. It's a data provider. It's a war strategist. It plays a war game, which is ping pong, which is binary. So it doesn't matter where it gets the energy. So you realize when I was a kid growing up, remember how many thousands and thousands and thousands of species were dying every day? Okay, so we're not talking about just humans, bipeds, right? We're talking about everything in nature. Trees, the entire planet becomes a killing field. So, and all that data is there. You know, what's his name? The guy out of the University of Arizona was a conservation biologist. He figured the whole place would collapse by 2040 because nobody's experiencing any love anymore. Nobody loves each other anymore. So you realize how this works, the child sex trade, intergalactic pirates, how this relates to control the gates, put all the data into the hopper, you know, into the blender, making smoothies, right? How smooth is it? And the relationship we have with each other, right? So you see how this works with law enforcement and people that work in the emergency medical services profession, the healthcare profession, the hospital profession, the institution of education, right? And you're going nowhere fast. So you see how many units of consciousness are chasing electrons, which are inverters, versus accelerators. So if the accelerators are not ahead of the curve, you lose your planet. Bye. That's a dead planet. So in this particular little episode, we have this Arkansas State Trooper who's stopping this lady, right? And you can hear all of a sudden her voice goes up and she's all upset. That's her central nervous system. Please leave me alone. Please leave me alone. Please leave me alone. So the cop's just following the instructions. Where is he getting the instructions? Because he's getting information, which is data, provided by the AI to let that cop know, listen, cause stress in this lady so I can feed on this battery. I want to drain this battery. Because this lady, the more stress this lady is going to come back to the AI for the drugs. Binary drugs. I'm freaking out. I wouldn't believe what I had to go through today. Because I didn't pay a fine because everything is based on sucking energy out of people through electrons, which is the money system. So you realize that all of their political institutions pass bills, rule-based function. If you don't follow that rule and carry that out, they've got some way to be able to tag you for those electrons in the future, what you're supposed to obey. And if you don't obey, just like what happened with this Arkansas trooper, he's got to follow those rules. Because he's dependent on those electrons in order to maintain what he does, which is wear a uniform and obey the AI. So that's like an NPC, a non-player character. He's just performing what he's been told to do because he's been programmed into his mind to carry out those rule-based functions. So he's operating on behalf of the AI. Okay? And he's not out there, this guy probably doesn't even realize it. It's like, I think you ought to find another profession. Yeah, but who's going to keep track of all these other people? We got to let all of them know they got to obey. That's what the symbol of a police car. That's why they paint them the color that they do, which is to trigger what? A fear-based response. Now we're back to child abuse, right? Fear. See, keep people in a state of fear, which is a lower state of vibration. Siphon off all their energy, right? Feed the machines, right? Remember Terminator, Rise of the Machines? Sucking energy out of those with souls. So this is a spiritual battle, which is an energy battle, which is an energy war, right? Between inverters, right? And accelerators. So you see where the Guardians come in on this, right? So I just provided some data for these folks and just said, listen, You know, how much energy, how many electrons were sucked out of that lady, including the police officer. And then they had a couple of them come out there, including some other lady. Right? Just as a routine traffic stop to come and find out that, hey, the county, you know, she hadn't paid a fine according to what the AI was saying. Right? And so now it's a bickering. Now we're competing, playing ping pong with each other over, oh, this is all about money. Right? Now all of a sudden the whole day is ruined because it's sucking on electrons. Wants your money. Wants your electrons. Rule-based functions. We got to follow the rules here, lady. You can't be driving down this road without a permit, and you got to pay us to be able to travel. So they control all the space on how you move, which is your transportation vehicle, which is your consciousness. So that means that every unit of consciousness is held captive to the system that is meant to drain your battery. Every battery. That's the truth of it. So I provided the data up there because I can tell you this. All you have to do is look at the data. How many children right now are under the care of a psychologist or a psychiatrist that are being prescribed drugs for mental illness? I've known this for many, many, many years, that the vast majority of the people that get running all the data, that the vast majority of people on the planet are mentally ill. Okay? And that's why they do things that don't serve them. Right? Because they're on a hamster wheel, so they're experiencing abuse every day. Day after day after day after day after day after day after day. By virtue of the relationships that we have with others, because we're all connected to each other on a motherboard. That's why I experience what everybody else experiences on the planet. And when you're doing it on a planetary level, you can see how that works between two magnetic poles as a polarity integrator. I got to transmute all this stuff, right? Yeah. By releasing more energy into the grid so it doesn't collapse. Maintain the balance in the poles. I'm not the only one, obviously, that's doing this. But it allows us to be aware of what's going on as a guardian. Of what we need to do in order to make sure that doesn't happen. Because we voted to make sure this was going to happen, which was to pull off the ascension cycle. It wasn't going to be stopped. Failure was not an option. The Bardo effect, the Voyager materials covered all this, right? So I put the information up there because a lot of folks watch these videos. Here's another perspective, right in your face. It's like throwing mud up on the wall. There it is. Now it's in your mirror, which basically means is that there's no time to hide from the truth no more, right? Because we're going to put that up there, and that's called full exposure, which is full disclosure. Which is knowing what the truth is because they have the right to know the truth. That's what love is. Love is the truth. Love is universal truth because love is what heals us. That's why we're here. So you know that as child abuse leads to adult self-abuse. So I know, having worked with law enforcement, they have one of the highest statistical occurrences of alcoholism and drug abuse. It's those that work in law enforcement. I know because I've been with them. So I know what they do during their off hours, right? Because police and fire guys have sort of a relationship with each other, right? And that also includes fire guys. Folks that work in firefighting, they're not immune to that stuff. I've been around some of the biggest alcoholics you can imagine, okay? And including myself. I had to take time off from that job as a result of that, as a matter of fact. Okay, because I wasn't going to allow myself to work in a position in which I'm trying to help others at a time when I'm sick, which is restore my spirit, restore my energy, right? Which is to get my connection back. Remember who I am, right? Because you're in a major triage trauma zone. In other words, you're on a dying planet, right? So you realize what happens if you can't maintain the eternal spirit of fire. Maintain the purity of your blood, the purity of your light, which is the purity of your energy. Get your spirit back up. So that's what it is. You're on a spiritual battlefield. So that means the soul is the prize. And what's looking for you and what's wanting your prize is Deadlight Magnet, which is Deadlight Artificial Intelligence. That's why all this technology was rolled out. Remember what Prince said? Don't let the computer get on you. Now we're back to ions. The ion transfers, right? Why it's updating its software on everybody's phone all the time. It's getting to learn you better and better, right? So you're running, you got a connection, right, with a dead light magnet, right? So what would you rather use as a communication system? A living light magnet or a dead light magnet, right? You want a relationship with something that's dead? Would you rather have a relationship with something that's living? So that would be the communication of Mama Earth, the great living spirit of Mother Earth, right? Reuniting with her, right? Having a spiritual relationship, grounding our feet to the great living spirit, the essence of Mother Earth. So all the statistics are there. I know I've mentioned this before, right here on this island, the big island of Hawaii. Okay, the statistics came out that roughly close to 50% of children and adolescents on this island have contemplated suicide. They're not even adults yet. So you can see that if you take the pie chart, right? Pie. If the mass majority of the pie chart, when you start in childhood and then they become adults over time, then you have leaders who are now in positions of control. Like they go into politics, they go into engineering, they go into teaching, they go into nursing, they go to be a doctor, they go to be a carpenter, they go to be anything. It means you're increasing the amount of people that are mentally ill in all these different occupations, including politics, executive leadership, CEOs in companies, family-owned businesses. So you can measure it by how people treat each other and the impact that it has, what? On the planetary central nervous system. Because everybody's got a nervous system, right? Neurons. So you see what it does to neurons. It decreases your neurons. Now your state of awareness is in a lower state of awareness until your soul is gone. So that's why it targets your endocrine system. That's what it does. It goes after the living spirit that is running DNA software, so it's going after the neurons. Burn the nerve fibers out. That's what it does. And so it's waiting for you because it's producing the drugs, the binary AI drugs, right? So now it's like looking for an escape hatch.